Welcome to Let's Talk Canine Fitness with your hosts, Katharina and Dr. Leslie I. Join us for the monthly podcast on all things dog fitness. Young, old, overweight, or athletic, our passion for canine fitness has you covered. Oh, welcome to Let's Talk Canine Fitness. Hi, Katharina.
Hi, Leslie. How are you doing?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm fine.
Good. So today's topic, we're going to talk about Cavalettis, which
Yay!
probably when you hear that word, you get this image in your mind and you're like, I know what that is and I hate doing it. It's so hard. I can't figure out the secret. At least that's what I hear from a lot of people. What do you think when you hear the word Cavalettis?
So, usually I see flying cones. That's the first picture I have when people talk about Cavalettis. But also, I see dogs trotting over it. I think that's the use most people know when we are talking about Cavalettis that you have to put them in a line and then the dog trots over it. So, but is that what we are going to talk about today?
Well, I think that'll be a piece of it, but also, I mean, let's just say we're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of Cavalettis. They have their place, and I do think at least with the equipment, there's a lot of things you can do with it. You don't have to just do the trotting, but I do think there's kind of this like Cavalettis are for trotting and that's the only thing they're for. And I hear, like they said, lots of people, I can't get my dog to do it. And when you sit them down, I mean, this is maybe a thing I do when I'm talking about canine fitness, is I want to talk about, well, why are you doing it? What are you trying to achieve? And it's really important for me to build an exercise from there. So I go with my goal and then think of, okay, what can I do to achieve that goal? And so Cavalettis don't always pop up in that. Like they may not be of use for whatever goal it is. And I do think they have a tendency though to be used for everything, but without necessarily knowing why. I don't know. That's what I see in rehab, I guess.
Okay.
It's probably a little bit different on fitness, but in rehab, I tend to see, like, if I go visit other places, they're like, and here's our Cavaletti setup. You know, it's just like
Yeah.
a permanent setup, and every dog that comes through the door for treatment does Cavalettis that day. And I, sometimes I'm like, okay, well maybe, yeah, you're using it for like a warm up or whatever, not really any other purpose than that. Okay. But it is one of those things, at least for me, as a efficient trainer, we're not going to use the lazy word. I don't like it because you need to change it constantly. Like you shouldn't just leave it set up one way and every dog does it that way. Like it should be changed for every dog that walks through. So that, I think, one, makes it really hard if you're doing fitness classes, because if you're doing a class with multiple dogs, now are you changing it for each dog's turn? That really sucks.
Yes, of course.
Same with having it in a rehab clinic where you're having, a different dog come through the exercise part every 30 minutes and you're like, no, I have to change it for this dog. So I tend to use
But
it most.
just 1 second. Did I get that right? They don't change the distance and height. They just use it for like it is for each dog, small dogs, middle-sized dogs, large dogs.
I mean, I'm not gonna make a blanket statement that happens everywhere.
No, of course not. But
because of course you're gonna get well, we don't do it that way at my clinic, but I would say generally speaking, in a very busy environment where you have lots of patients coming and going, the amount of changing that happens to the setup is not appropriate.
But you mentioned fitness classes. For example, when I do fitness classes, I don't do like these circuits. So each dog has its own setup of everything. So it's the setup is made for the dog. Some have Cavaletti, one maybe or more, depending on the exercise we are doing. And then each dog has its own setup for the size and the goal. So I don't do classes like beginner class or advanced class or senior or junior anymore. If you come, you get your own setup according to your skills and goals. So that's how I work.
So maybe, right, we're like, it's all about experience. So maybe what like the question is for people to comment about, like, what do you do? Like, if you use Cavalettis regularly in your rehab clinic or in your fitness classes, like, how do you manage the setup? How do you make it as efficient as possible? Because I will say that is my biggest pet peeve about them, is having to change them all the time. Like, I don't know why. Like, I find it easy to be like, okay, this patient, I need this piece of equipment, and like go grab it and bring it. But having to set up Cavalettis and having to set them up different for every patient, like, that to me is just way too time consuming.
Exactly.
And I mean, it also, space is a consideration, at least for me now. If we really want to do it, I'll figure out a way to like set it up in the hall, which I don't even use like a traditional Cavaletti set for, because it won't fit in the hall. So I'm like,
okay,
I'm just putting things out there for the dog to like step over. All that said, Cavalettis are like one, I have a Cavaletti online class. Two, it is a very prominent exercise in my jump into shape class. So I'm like that weird person who, I'm like, in real life, I find them annoying and don't like using them, but yet in my online life of, teaching fitness and stuff, I do them a lot. But I think part of that is just because people want to do them. People think they are like this, I don't know, miracle exercise. Like, if my dogs will do it, everything will be fixed and perfect and wonderful. And so I think a little bit of it is me like feeding the masses, like giving them what they want. Okay, you want Cavalettis? I can help you figure them out.
So we are feeding the masses with this episode then?
Yes.
Okay.
We're helping them understand their Cavalettis, because that's what they want. They want to know how to do them. They want yeah.
Okay, so besides the placement of like 5-6 poles and then trotting over, or using in your online classes? How do you use them in your fitness or rehab sessions when you just have one dog? Do you have some special setups or special exercises you use them? Or
So for me, the first thing I'm going to think about is, again, my goal. And if I know I want to use Cavalettis, we'll just skip the step of like figuring out that's the right exercise. But say like Cavalettis are on the list, I'm going to be able, what's my goal for it? And kind of the big picture goals that I think about are, am I working on range of motion, specifically flexion? So I tend to see a lot of dogs that just I don't like, not shuffle, like they just have a lot of stiffness or straight rear legs. They don't like to bend their rear joints. And so Cavalettis are definitely one of those things that I will use to help with that. But in that case, the way I'm going to set it up is I am going to use a high pole. So maybe just like around stifle height, maybe just under stifle height, because I want them to actually have to flex
lift
all their joints to step over it. I'm also, if it's that high, it's going to be a walk, not a trot. So I will put the poles fairly close together, again, to try and like get that slower gait. They can't just like go through them. I also would potentially use them a little bit higher rails if I'm working on body awareness, but maybe not specifically range of motion. So in those, I'm thinking about like my ataxic dogs. So the dogs that, you know, they're not paralyzed, obviously, because they need to be able to walk, but they have some of that. They've lost their perception of where their legs are in space. And so I don't want it so low like I do for trotting, but I'm not going to have it super high because it's also hard for them. But I want it set at a height that, again, they're like having to really think about it. Like, oh, I need to pick my leg up this high. Again, with body awareness, I might even have the poles at different heights. So again, they're like paying attention to that. Oh, this one's at this height. This one's at this. I don't have to pick it up as high here. Here I have to pick it up higher. Also, that feeds in well to different links apart. So rather than having it, you know, exactly 1 foot apart, every single one, mix it up a little bit. So again, they're really having to pay attention to what they're doing. So that's if I want to work on body awareness. And then really I use the trotting for you know, I'll say that I guess more fitness than like a specific problem that I'm working on in the clinic. So when I look at trotting, I'm really trying to build some like push off their rear. Oftentimes I'm looking at like lengthening their trotting gait. I will use it, like I'll say, oh, this can be a cardio exercise, you know, try and get the heart rate up a little bit. That where I use that is also so like for my jump into shape class, because it's mostly about jumping, we do a lot of work on gait and trying to get the dog to understand kind of like its stride length more than anything. So, because we're working on helping the dog figure out, oh, I need to take so many strides and then jump. And so we start with Cavalettis because I want them to understand it first with trotting, and then we go into a run or a canter. And I will have them in that class specifically maintain the Cavalettis because I do think it can be a nice warm up. So a lot of times I'll be like, before we start anything, you're doing Cavalettis, a set of Cavalettis as a warm up, because it just, it's nice for overall body movement warming up, but it also they have to be mentally engaged. If they're not mentally engaged, they're just gonna blast through it, and then we're gonna have cones flying. And
Exactly.
I don't want those dogs. I don't want them in that mental state going into their jump work. I want them thoughtful. So that's kind of my basic premise of Cavalettis. But then in my online Cavaletti class, I came up with I don't even remember if I had maybe 12 different exercises.
Okay.
And a lot of it was just, what can you do with this stuff? You spent all this money on cones and bars, and all you're going to do with it is trotting. No, let's come up with other things. So, doing things like having the dog crawl under it, different setups, like instead of just having a straight line, what if you did it? I think I had an X. So it was like sometimes the dog turns.
Like a cross?
Yeah. I did under over, so like going over one, under one, jumping, just take one and jump it. We did different ways of going through it, so like sidestepping through it, walking backwards through it. Another one I play with it, I call it pickup sticks, where literally I'm just like, throw the bars and then throw a bunch of cookies, and the dog just has to go
so
through.
like Mikado, like this, that game. Okay.
And then just kind of really just trying to be creative, what else can you do with these? Because I do want you to get your money's worth out of this equipment, and not just think it's only good for doing the trotting through. I will say I now use the cones a lot for just cone games, like doing stuff with just the cone. Can the dog go out and around cone? Hide stuff under, hide a cookie under one of the cones, and the dog has to figure out which one. So I just try to make use of what I have, rather than always being like, oh well, this one thing does this one thing, and if I want to do something else, I have to go buy another thing. I'm like, get creative.
It's all about variety, so you can use it. I don't do a lot of this trotting thing, because it annoys me that I have to change with every dog. But I use them. I use single ones when I do, for example, these connection exercises I'm doing, so that you have something to work on, range of motion, to work on body awareness, coordination, balance, and stuff, so that all these things. So most of the time I use them in combination with other equipment.
Yeah, one thing I just thought of was I will use just one rail, two cones, one bar, a lot. One of my favorite exercises that I actually probably do the most with it is my mountain climber exercise, which we probably talked about in the Iliopsoas episode. But yeah, it's again just not moving through a set of things, but here's one. Pay attention, you have to reach over it and then reach back, and really isolate one leg, and thinking about exactly how you're going to move those. So yeah, a much more thoughtful exercise.
Yeah, so there are a lot of different uses you can use Cavaletti than just let the dog run over it. And I think that's it's really great pieces of equipment. The only thing when we are going back to like the trotting thing, I struggle with is when I have very small dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So to find out how, I mean, you can flip the cones that the bar is on the very low to the ground, but it's still not on the ground. And when you have small dogs sometimes, or dogs that really have rehab dogs that hardly can lift their limbs, so I haven't found out the perfect equipment yet for that. So maybe if you have an idea, let me know, or someone else, let me know. I'm still on the hunt for the perfect Cavaletti set.
Yeah, me too. What I agree with like the setup. Yeah, it's again, that's one of those pieces that I'm like, I don't want to deal with this on a daily basis. Again, another reason why I like dealing with it online is that I can, look at the dog and give people suggestions of like how to make their set, and they can make it specifically for their dog. And I don't have to like provide it in person of like, here's my tiny 2-pound dog setup. That's just, like the tiniest little thing versus like my Irish wolfhounds that then the highest thing on the cones isn't high enough. So I appreciate the online setup because I feel like I can definitely support people and be like, oh, well, look at this or look at this. You can make it this way. And they can go out and like make it specifically for their dog. There's a lot to be desired with them. Because again, it's kind of that problem that you saw from the beginning is like everything is made for kind of that like medium sized dog. And then when you get the either end of the spectrum, it doesn't work as well, and you have to come up with different ways to try and make it work. I know when I had little dogs that even the tipping the cones over didn't work. I was like taping the cones to the floor or not the cones, the bars to the floor. So they were actually like on the floor, but they needed to be taped so that if the dog hit them, they didn't just continue to roll under the dog. So yeah, out of everything, I would say they're definitely a piece that you have to get really creative with if you have kind of the generic Cavaletti setup that you can buy online, and figuring out how to make it work for every different type of dog you're going to see. And especially, I mean, obviously fitness, but I found it was most difficult in the rehab setting, because there would be cases where I was like, I really want to use this and I really think this is the most appropriate tool, but it is not the right size for this dog, and I can't do enough to it to really get to the right size. So I don't know what the solution is, and like making one, because what I would dream of is something that I could just be able to like create any height I wanted, support different sizes of the rail, because that's a problem I think sometimes is like you might be able to put it on the ground, but that bar is still 2 inches, or it's still high for the little tiny dog. And then also make it really durable, in that if it's lightly tapped, it's not going to go flying across the room. Like it's,
Yeah.
I don't know, I want to say like heavy, but like not heavy in that it won't fall over, but heavy in that it stays in place.
Yeah, it's like it really is difficult, and I have tried a lot of different possibilities. Now I have like a hurdle set, but then you have you don't have those cones, but it's still using a lot of space because there are these three pieces on the sides, on both sides. So it's the lowest bar is on the ground, so that works, but still it's it's still not heavy enough for a middle-sized dog. I mean my Boston Terriers, that works works fine, but then I was thinking about maybe I could fill the poles with sand or something, but then I see all the mess because they don't really stick to the stuff. It's just, yeah, it's just it's not the perfect thing I want. I'm just it's close to, but not there yet. So
Yeah. And I want my set to also be able to work outside just as well as it works inside. I will say for my jump into shape class, because again, one of my goals is minimal equipment when I do an online class. Like I don't want to make people feel like they can't do any of my classes because they have to go out and buy a lot of equipment. And because it's a jumping class, obviously they need jumps. So I make them build their Cavalettis out of the jumps. It's not perfect. It's, there's still issues with it, but at least I have many heights to play with. From 2 inches all the way up to 26 inches usually. I mean, not that anyone's going to be doing 26-inch Cavalettis, but
I have no idea how high that is, because we are working centimeters and meters over here.
I'm going to say it's about half a meter. It's not exactly
okay, so
half 50, a meter,
50 centimeters. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's approximately middle of the chest height of a small dog, medium-sized dog.
Yeah. Basically, it's not, you're not going to have a dog doing it that high. Just having the jumps provides a lot of range for me to be like, oh, you can set it at 2 for this dog. Oh, this dog could have it at 6, versus just the standard Cavaletti set where it's like you have 3 or 4 choices for height and that's it. There's nothing in between. So if one of those doesn't work, then you're out of luck and you have to figure it out.
That is, these things I'm using are the same though, so you can go from 0 to maybe 1 meter. You could go up to 1 meter, so you can also use it if you want your dog to go under it or crawl, because it's just, you can fluently adjust. There are no pieces. You have don't have steps. You can just do however you like. So I really prefer that, because you can really use the height for each dog very close to perfect.
I want that variability. Although then it's like
but then when you have those, it's a question of space, because they take a lot of space when you have to storage them, or when you have to. So it's that, and it's more, they are more cost intensive. Also, I mean, cones and just a few posts don't need a lot of space to storage, but yeah.
Yeah.
So with all these things you have to take into consideration for dog owners. I mean, if you have your own clinic or studio.
Yeah. So I feel, I don't know, I might be wrong, but it feels like we've talked a lot about what we don't like. Is there anything, I mean, what makes you happy about Cavalettis?
Have you been too negative? Sorry, there was a problem in the.
I feel like we've
No,
done
I really like Cavaletti. I'm just not. It's just. I mean, it's like with everything. Nothing is perfect, and I like to use, but for my personal use, I don't use it a lot to let my own dogs trot over it, because I'm too lazy to always adjust them, because when I'm doing, I take 3 of my dogs and go and train with them, and then always to adjust. That's annoying. So I'm not doing that. I'm lazy. I prefer to do other setups. So but I really like to use them in combination with other equipment. My main use for them is like is for body awareness exercises.
Yeah. Would you say you use them more when your dogs are younger?
How young is younger?
Well, like for me, Cavalettis is almost like a puppy exercise. Like it's on my list of things to like work on when the dog is young. So obviously when they not when like they have no idea where their legs are. But I'm thinking like potentially, I don't know, I introduce it somewhere between like 4 to 6 months old. Of like just like 4 months old, it would be like walking through it, like pick up your feet kind of thing, not necessarily trotting yet, but I tend to almost, it's like one of those like check off things that like I teach the dog to do when they're young, so under a year old. And once I feel like, okay, they understand it, they know how to trot through it, then it's much rarer that I bring it out again. So it is kind of that body awareness, like understand how to move, and then it goes away.
It's interesting you're bringing that up now, because last week I introduced my puppy Vilma to Cavaletti. She is, let me check, we're in week 12. So she was 11 weeks old. So, and it's a Boston Terrier. You can imagine she's a small puppy. So if I would use cones, that's not going to work. So I had to figure out something, and I don't want to tape them on my floor, because that leaves marks. So I had to figure out something, how to put the poles on the floor that they don't roll very quick, but because I wasn't, it's not the trotting, and we didn't do, it was just introducing her to lifting her paws, so it's more for body awareness. So I used the Sensimets on each side, the wave one, and let the pole lay inside that little valley. So she's not very heavy, so she was able to move them away, but they were a little stabilized there. So that was very interesting. And she did quite well. I've never done it before. That's a lie. I've done it before with her grandma, with Trippy when she was younger, but that was just one pole. So, but with more than one pole, I've never done it before. And she did quite well. It was very interesting to watch. And that's the earliest time I've introduced a puppy to walking over the poles.
Yeah.
And I also use it for my older dogs to walk over it very slow or on the ground. So because they also for balance coordination, but for my sometimes with the show dogs, it can help.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they know how to trot, so they don't need.
Yeah. It's more of like, can you push the trot for a little bit? Yeah. Bigger stride kind of thing. Interesting. Yeah, I have a tendency. Yeah, I feel like all my dogs, when they're, it's like a check off. Okay, I taught them how to do this. And then of course, whatever other dogs are in my house get to do it when it's set up for the young dogs, because I am like, if I'm gonna do this, I'm setting it up and I'm leaving it up. And I'm not gonna take it down until I'm done with
I
it.
feel you.
So yeah, so I have a tendency to like go through stages of it, of like, we do this a lot now and then it goes away. I will say I've tried to be a little bit better since it is in my online classes, and at least like pull it out every summer. So again, I have a tendency to want to do
Outdoors.
it outside, where I have more space. And so that pretty much limits me to summertime here. So yeah, it's definitely not an exercise that I do consistently all the time. I just, I
So
don't,
it's something you have to remind you of to do it. Yeah. It's the same here. I really like it, but yeah, it's not. I don't know why, but I have my routines, and it's like I like doing this at the moment. So I'm trying to figure out this kind of setup for all the dogs, different this type of setup in different on different levels for the different dogs. But then I switch these things because I want to work with this, and then I do this for some time, and then I change something next, and then maybe sometimes it has it been Cavaletti? Yeah, they have been in a lot of my exercises as well. So I like doing something and then doing something different, and then
I find, so one of the things, and again, I don't, maybe this is the ugly of Cavalettis, at least for me, is I get frustrated with it because it takes so much like mental engagement for the dogs. I feel like sometimes, how do I want to put this? Like every single time it comes out, because I don't bring it out except for like maybe every summer, it's like reteaching them again, like what this setup means. And so it's like having to go through that of like, no, you have to be thoughtful, and this isn't just go as fast as possible. Can be frustrating for me. And I feel like that's what most of my clients have frustration about when they're trying to do it, is like, yeah, the dogs just want to run through it, go as fast as possible. And at least for sport dogs, that makes sense to me. Like I don't, when I do it with my dogs, I'm like, well, of course they want to just go fast through it. I've taught them that everything is about going fast. If we're going to go do agility, it's about being as fast as possible. And so I think because of my setup, the fact that I'm doing it outside and they're like, oh, this is another agility thing. And I have to be like, no, this isn't. And so that, again, because I don't find the benefit, the benefit of doing that exercise doesn't necessarily outweigh my frustration of reminding them how to do it.
But how about doing it on leash?
Well, I have my tricks for getting them to do it. Like I do.
No, I mean not your. I mean your clients' dogs.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well,
Is that
yeah,
something you recommend?
I will if I think it will help. So again, I think it's dog dependent. So like I have one dog who I do, well, so it's interesting because he kind of goes more crazy on leash. Because leash more than anything indicates agility. Because I don't really leash all my dogs. My dogs are always off leash everywhere, except for agility. Because in agility, they have to go in on leash and come out on leash. So I have one dog who definitely has put that together of like, I only wear my leash when agility is happening.
And then he's going crazy because...
Yeah, so he tends to be a little bit more high. So what I tend to do with him is actually, he still needs that, like, sometimes that little bit of like extra help. I will put a long line on him because that's a little bit different, especially because it's probably the fact that it's like a harness and then like a leash attached to the harness. He's like, oh, this is an ability. He also was taught tracking when he was young, which again was a harness and a long line to do the tracking. So again, he's one of those, he's very quick to associate and pattern. So I do think with him specifically, he has that like harness, long line, concentrate, leash, slip leash over my head, agility. So that helps them. I also like the biggest thing for me that I find I'm always having to tell my clients with Cavalettis is do not stop and start. So don't put them on a stay and then release them, because especially if you're dealing with an agility dog, they're just going to blast. Like a stay and a release is a release to go fast. And I find it's better to just keep moving. So a lot of times rather than have them like go back and forth through it, I'll just have them circle around. So they go through it and then they keep circling and they never get to stop moving. And a lot of times the dogs pick it up. Then they're like, oh, I get this. And then you can start to do the cool things of like going back and forth and like having something for the dog to wrap at the end. Although I will say I've seen some dogs, when you give them something to wrap at the end, that again brings that like agility thought into their head and they kind of explode, because we teach a lot of like foundation agility with like wrapping a wing or wrapping a cone. So then when you put that out there, they're like, oh my God, and go fast mode again. So there's lots of little tricks. And for me, it's so much, I don't have a like one size fits all for the cat. Like it's, I'm like, okay, do it. Let me see what the dog is doing. And then based on that, we're going to change things up. Like if I've got a dog that's like constantly just staring at the owner as they go through, and so they're not looking where they're going, right? They're just like looking to the side and hitting everything because they're not looking forward. I'm like, okay, that one definitely is not on leash. Like there's, you have to switch to like a lot of forward focus too much forward focus in some of these agility dogs. They're like, oh, that's go fast. And, so it's figuring out like what each dog needs to understand, to understand the goal of the exercise and get there. And it can be a lot of experimenting. And I think that's where people get frustrated with it, is that, yeah, sometimes you just have to try something and see if it works. There's not this like magic of like, oh, if you just had done it, set it up like this and done it like this the first time, it would have been perfect. Every dog has different needs for figuring it out.
That's true. Yeah, I really like the circle setup. I'm doing that with my young conformation dogs as well, where I'm going, they are on leash, and then we are doing just the trot thing. And then on one side of the studio, there are the Cavalettis, and then we're just going circles, and that's great. I really like that. And then we do it, like you said, I just do it like that. We are doing it on leash, the circle, and when I see, I can see them in the mirror. When I see that they really got it, I take them off leash, and then I just walk beside them up and down. So we go up and then make a turn and go down over. So that works very well. So
yeah, I think yeah, you just have to like, it's definitely what I would say, it's like kind of a go with the flow exercise of like, just listen to what the dog is telling you they need and provide it.
I mean, it's a great full body exercise when you're using it for fitness, not only for the dog, because you have to do the setup. So yeah.
Yes, I will say that is probably one complaint I actually get. Like I do have people that are like, but I don't want to have to move. I just want the dog to get exercise. And I'm like, well, there are some things where you're going to have to move too.
Yeah, and Cavaletti is one thing you really have to move. So it's not that bad actually. I mean, we have all
different opinions.
Yeah, but I mean, I hate it too. But actually, it isn't that bad because we have to move as well and stay fit ourselves, not only the dog. So it's not that bad, although it is annoying. It's that inner conflict.
Yes. I mean, it's I kind of try and bring up like, I'm not asking you to like take the dog for a 5-mile run. It's just, a little bit of movement. It's good for all of us. I don't know, what else do we want to say about Cavalettis?
Oh, I don't know. I think we said it. We wrapped it up.
I feel like I've let out all my feelings about them.
Yeah, me too. Knows. I mean, it is like it is what it is. But I think we can say we like Cavalettis, but it's like when you're working with paw stackers or things like that. That's annoying as well. I mean, you have to set it up again and again and again. So it's just like that.
Yeah. I feel, what it is, maybe this is, I don't know. I think about like when I am wanting the dog a certain exercise, I feel like with the other equipment, I have the ability to just be like, oh, I want to use this, and this to help me get what I want. Like I can use the equipment to shape the behavior, right?
Yep.
Versus the Cavalettis, it's a little bit more difficult. You're limited in what you can do and what you can use to like help the dog understand. I just want you trotting through this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it does, like, obviously the part of it is to force the dog to trot. But yeah, you can't do a lot of manipulation to the environment to
Yep.
get it the way I feel like you can with when you have, you know, a wall full of different equipment options that if one thing's not working, I can just switch it out and
Yes.
be like, oh, let me try this instead.
Yeah, I was
So maybe
when I started work when I was doing the puppy program, creating the puppy program, I was like, Cavaletti. Yeah, you can start very early because it's not,
mm-hmm.
if you're low to the ground, it's not that demanding, and it's really easy to understand for the puppy. But when you have a small puppy, what can you use? I mean, it was like when I sat Wilma on the ground when she was 8 weeks, and I had that Cavaletti thing next to her. I was like, that's never going to work. What could you do? I was tempted to use like these wooden cooking spoons,
Yeah.
for example, and they want roll away because, but I mean that's maybe something for Chihuahua or Pomeranian, where you can use those because they don't roll away because they are flat on one side and then they can
Mm-hmm.
trot over it. That's I actually my puppy, she grew, so it didn't have, haven't tried that, but it's really something I'm thinking about as an alternative for small dog owners, that they can use those. I mean, you can buy
Yeah.
here, at least you can buy sets of 3. So you buy, and they cost almost nothing. So you buy 2 sets of 3 and you have your Cavaletti set for a small dog.
That's perfect. Yeah.
Mm. But I haven't tried it, so I no guarantee that it works.
You're like, I don't know yet. Hopefully it'll work. I mean, it's a great idea. I mean, that's kind of similar to like what I used when I was doing a lot of like TPLO rehab, and I wanted to use Cavalettis for that body awareness and that flexion of the stifle. I would tell people like just go to your your cleaning supplies, grab your brooms, your mops, your those kind of things,
Yeah.
and just put them on the floor, because again, they're not going to roll, but the dog can start learning to step over them. And then if you need to raise them up, save all your aluminum cans. So like when you're drinking your sparkly water, save the can. When it's empty, put a little notch in it, and then you can start raising up the height of your broom and your mop and stuff, and use that to increase the challenge. So, and I had some clients that like went all out with that kind of setup. And then I had others that were like, I'm just going to go and make my own Cavalettis. And they would go buy the construction cones and PVC, and they'd, drill holes. And, I was like, okay, cool. Way to go. Make me a set too.
What I was once I had this idea, and one of my customers tried it, was like we had this this dog. He was very young. He had a hip problem. It was undiagnosed but obvious, and he had elbow surgery. So we wanted him to do like Cavaletti, but they didn't want to buy anything. So I was like, and I wanted to do to that. He had to lift his legs in different heights. So I told them to go into the wood and grab different branches that are not straight, that they're like, yeah, in weird shapes, not too high, but so they use those that worked very well as that worked fine. So also an alternative.
Just have to, get creative. Because there's stuff out there that you can find and use. You just have to look around. Cool.
Yeah, and if not, and if you're in the US, I just want to say, go and grab your kit at our friends from Clean Run. They have perfect service, and if you want to get a set, or ask them which set is best for your needs, or ask your trainer. They should know.
Yeah, hopefully. Clean Run is one of the resources that I use a lot. For people to like find this kind of stuff. And they pretty much always have it. It's easy to get, especially in the US. Like,
exactly.
And it's interesting, how many people don't think to look there for the fitness stuff. And I'm like, no, go. It's a great place. Yeah. They've got it. And it's easy. It's always the first place I check. I'm like, when I need something, I'm like, I need something dog related. Clean Run is the first.
They will have it. They will have it.
Like literally anything. Like I needed a pop-up tent to travel to Europe with, and I was like, Clean Run. What do they have? So yeah, it's a great source. Cool.
Fantastic. So
Cavalettis. Hopefully everyone is just as excited about them as we are.
That was a little bit ironic. No, no, we love Cavalettis. It's just we are too lazy. But there is something new. We have to. I think that's it with Cavalettis. It's it. That's it.
It's it.
Okay, perfect.
If people have questions, they can comment and ask us, which is yes. What do you want to talk
about? Because we want to introduce a new section we are doing in this podcast, and we promise to do more episodes than the last year. So this new section is called Pick a Topic, and it's actually not you, our listeners, that pick a topic. It's us picking a topic, but you have to write something interesting, bring up questions or topics, either on Leslie's pages or mine or our groups or the Let's Talk Canine Fitness Facebook group site, whatever. And then we will pick something interesting and talk about it in that special section at the end of each podcast recording. I think that's it.
Okay, wait. Yeah. Let's summarize. So we're
oh my god.
So we're still picking the topic?
Of course.
No. Okay.
Yes, you or I will pick. One of us will pick a topic that we found on our pages. Someone writes something interesting or a question or whatever, and then we are going to look and pick something and talk about it. That was the plan.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember when I wrote it to you, it was very late. So you're excused. Yeah, well, that's it.
Okay. That's exciting. We promise we're gonna stay on top of it and have another great season of Let's Talk Kind and Fitness with all kinds of good topics, so that you all out there can stay fit and stay in the game.
Stay in the game.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Let's Talk Canine Fitness. If you enjoyed our podcast, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review on your favorite podcast app. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and online at www.letstalkcaninefitness.com. This episode was produced by Leslie Ide and Katharina Mattioli. Music written and performed by Moonfly. Music provided by premiumbeat.com.